supposed to talk about freedom, 4th of July. I've never been good at following those themes, so I'm not going to do it. I want to talk about something different. For decades in our movement, the tagline that we used was, change your thinking, change your life. And I remember when I first heard that, I got it right away. I mean, that's cool, yeah. Change your thinking, change your life. So change things like being judgmental, change things like thinking you're a victim, change things that you're thinking that don't work into something that does work. And most of it seemed pretty etherical and, top shelf type of thinking about understanding the presence of the divine within us. And all of that's true. And then this guy came along named Don Miguel Ruiz. Anybody heard of him? He was not really a part of our movement, but it seems that our movement embraced him so strongly in what he was teaching, his Toltec teachings, that he kind of became part of our teaching. And we've used that for years, although it's been a while since I've talked about that. So you know what he wrote. His first book was called The Four Agreements, and I'm sure that most of you can recite those agreements. We'll see. Okay, so the first one, see, you don't get ahead of me. You'll say the wrong one. Be impeccable with your word. Very powerful, the idea of impeccability. The second one, don't take anything personally. The third one, don't make assumptions. And the fourth one, oh good, you're paying attention. That is not correct, it's that one. Always do your best. Okay. Now, what are you going to remember from the Four Agreements? The one I made up, right? So what I want to talk about today is the third one. Don't make assumptions. Now, it's not normally my thing to want to talk about what I don't want you to do, although I did write a book called Stop Being Sorry. So I do want to talk about this thing of assumptions. And what I find to be the most interesting aspect of this thing called assumptions is that most of the time when we're expressing them and having them, we don't know that's what's going on. We think what we're saying is just so, and yet it's an assumption. An assumption, by definition, means it's something that we believe or hold as an idea that we have absolutely no proof of. And that gets a little tricky too, because we do want you to use your intuitive senses in your life. We want you to go beyond the physicality of life, and if something comes to you, to certainly at least consider it. And I'm not trying to get you not to be intuitive in your lives. I want you to be intuitive. But most of the things that we have as assumptions were things that at one time in our lives seemed to fit perfectly with a circumstance. Something happened, we said, that means this, and it just fit like a glove. So now, anytime something even close to that shows up, we go into that, we go back and find that belief. We do it instantly. You don't even have to try. Subjective mind is so powerful and so quick. It's faster than any computer. Boom, we have a thought. And we say, that's what's happening here. And the truth is that that's not what's happening here. We've made an assumption that fits so nicely in the past suddenly fits better in this new thing, or fits at least as well. And that's just not what's going on. Assumptions, things that have no real basis in fact or reality, maybe in fact, but let's not go to fact because we deal with truth rather than those data bits of fact that we applied somewhere once. That's kind of why we get into these fixes with assumptions. But we're all doing it. We're all doing it all of the time. And it's also because we have this rich inner world. It's called our subjective mind, which collects all the information we've ever received, has evaluated it, applied value to it, and organizes so that it's instantly available to us, and we immediately apply something to what's happening now, rather than kind of being with what's happening now. And that creates a challenge, because oftentimes that's not actually what's happening. And one of the greatest thinkers of all time has a thought on that. Assumptions are made, and most assumptions are wrong. And we all know the little ditty that assumptions make a donkey out of you and me. Yeah, you know what I mean. Okay, so this incredible man, even when he's sticking his tongue out, speaks truth to us, that most assumptions are wrong. They're not accurate. Yet, we treat them like they're absolute truth. And they just come out of our mouths, or they just go through across our mind as something is going on. And we're absolutely content that what we just did to evaluate the circumstance before us has been properly identified, it's been properly cataloged, it's been added to those things that we are absolutely sure about in our lives, and we completely miss the mark. I can go on, and I'm probably going to for a little while. In fact, I want to talk about the types of assumptions that we go through. Here's what we don't do, though. We don't watch somebody do something and go, boy, that was stupid, and then say to ourselves, no, actually, I'm sure there was an absolutely good reason why that person did that thing that was so stupid. We don't think that way. We stop at stupid, the first stupid, and we go, that's just stupid. And we think that we've actually identified it correctly. But what I've experienced about people is that everyone thinks what they're doing is absolutely appropriate based on all those experiences of their lives. It makes perfect sense to them. It doesn't make perfect sense to us, but that's because we have our own set of experiences, and it doesn't fit nicely into ours. It fits nicely into theirs. So they're wrong, and we're right. At least we think so initially. So here are the 12 categories, the 12 types of assumptions that people have. And what I want you to do with this, we're going to go through this quickly, and I want you just to let this wash over you and see if any of this sounds familiar. Sounds like maybe some things that goes on in your thinking. Not when you're having assumptions, because you don't know that's what you're doing, and nor do I. I'm not getting out of this. But think about these things. Assumption number 1, unrecognized. That means we have no idea that it's an assumption. We think it's a truthism. Or as the guy on nighttime television said, trutheisms. We accept it. We think it's so. But we don't recognize that we have completely missed the mark. Unstated, meaning that we think it, but we don't say it out loud, because we're just going to hold this to ourselves. We know we're right, but we're not going to embarrass anybody or say anything that's going to create problems. We're just going to keep it to ourselves. Still assumptions. Unquestioned, which means that we're not willing to explore this idea. It's an assumption that we're just taking on face value. We can't defend it, we can't prove it, but we believe it. And so there it is in the midst of our lives. A naive assumption. Let's see what my phrase was for that. Assumptions based on unimaginative thinking. Ever done that? I certainly have. Pragmatic assumptions. Those are the ones that are made up, but for a practical purpose. In other words, we have something yet to achieve, or I'm in a group that has something to achieve, and we say things that have no basis in reality, but we say them to kind of encourage the thing along. Like, there's a funny, I think it's a Geico commercial where Pinocchio is a motivational speaker, and he's looking at some guy in the front row saying, "You have incredible potential," and his nose keeps growing. It's like, those are assumptions. Those are, anytime, even with a good intention, we make assumptions to try to help things along. Productive assumptions. Those are assumptions that are based on probabilities or expert forecasts. Still assumptions. They may or may not happen, but somebody said they could, so we're going to accept them as so. Unproductive assumptions. Those are the ones that, let's see, unproductive. There it is. Those that have no useful outcomes. That but still, because of something in our past, we thought that they were so, and they seem to fit, but it doesn't really help. Have you been in with a group of people and somebody throws a downer into the middle of it? They thought they were helping, but really what they're doing is making an assumption based on their experience that really doesn't fit in the moment. Likely facts. Likely facts are assumptions based on other information that suggests they are likely true, but still there's no proof. So maybe, maybe not. Predictions. There we go. Assumptions based on probabilities. Pessimistic is the next one. There it is. Pessimistic assumptions expect a desired, an undesirable outcome. They kind of fit with being unproductive, but they're intentionally, they come from people who see the glass half empty. Sour grapes, an assumption that is made because you figure you're not going to achieve it anyway. You might as well not want to achieve it based on the fact that it wouldn't work out the way you'd like. Sour grapes. And the final one, an optimistic assumption where things will be easy, low risk, and productive. Maybe, maybe not. We do these crazy things because we believe that we're safer having some idea of what's going to happen. The thing that we are always afraid of in our lives is what's coming in the future that we can't guarantee. So we apply assumptions. We apply assumptions to protect ourselves so that we can be prepared for what's going to happen. That's why some people think it's so important to be pessimistic, because then they can be delightfully surprised when it doesn't work out that way. The problem is that having an assumption is having an impact on your life. Any assumption that you make is holding you in the place of that idea and is bringing it into your life. It's bringing it into your life. And a lot of the stuff that you're assuming you may not want. So that's going to keep you from getting where you want to go. Our subconscious mind, and I've already talked about this twice, but I have one more thought about that. Our subconscious mind is so powerful. It is so capable of providing information that we often just rely on it. We just accept whatever thought comes. I've seen that happen. In the wonderful cases where I said what thought came out of my mouth, and somebody said, well, that's not true. And until then, it fit perfectly. And they said, oh, it's not true. So then I had this need personally. Now, some people would immediately start defending their assumption because people tend to defend their limiting thoughts, their small thoughts. That's just the way we seem to do it. But if we can get to a place where when somebody tells us maybe that's not so, that we could evaluate it and look at it and maybe see it differently. I would say that when someone brings that, it's presenting an opportunity. It's presenting us with something that we haven't learned out how to do ourselves, which is question all this stuff. And that's really what's coming down to here. The ideas before us are more about questions than anything. And here's an example of one way this can happen. And this may or may not apply to your life, but give this a try. You have someone who lives with you, a partner, a roommate, whatever it is. And you've gone to the grocery store and you're bringing in groceries. And this other person often gets up and helps you with the groceries when you come in. This time they sit there and watch television instead. Isn't that ripe for an assumption? Something's wrong. They don't love me anymore. They are so obsessed on that stupid television show that they can't give me the time of day. Huh? And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many things like that. And that's just one of thousands of scenarios that happen to us all day long. Something happens, it doesn't quite fit into our reality. It's not the way we want it to be. Boom, assumption. We suddenly think that there's something to be concerned about, something that's not going so well, that isn't really serving us the way we'd like. So what's the answer? The answer is really to first understand the devaluation of assumptions and to stay away from them, because they really do create screw-ups in our lives. They are the beginning point of every argument. They are the beginning point of every crisis, every struggle, everything would go. If we would go back and look and see where those kinds of events started in our lives, we would likely find an assumption that didn't work, that didn't help, that didn't support us. So the place to go when that occurs, when something comes up in mind, a thought, that suddenly brings some tension, some anxiety, some disapproval, whatever it's bringing, it's not pretty, the thing to do is to ask questions. I know this is simple, but maybe not, because we've trained ourselves to believe the assumption and to stay with it. But that doesn't work. What works in our lives is to ask a question, at least one, maybe many. But to begin with something, and this is something I learned with Barbara years ago, we worked on it. We actually came up with some basic questions to ask when there was something that suddenly was a little squirrely. Like, is that what you mean? This thing that I'm seeing you, that you're saying, am I getting it right? Do I understand what you mean? What do you want? How can I help? Would it be okay if, fill in the blank? Any of these would move you away from a limiting thought, an assumption, into a place of conversation and communication. How can I help? Nice questions. But the point is, ask a question. And of course, ask a question that's not offensive. Ask a question that isn't making them wrong. Don't ask, why did you do that stupid thing? So it's not just questions, it's appropriate questions that help you in your communication, and you're not doing this for the other person. They're fine. They're not your problem. What's going on is this internal conversation that has you holding on to an idea that isn't working. And it's not working because you can feel it not working. So ask a question. What question would you ask? How would you resolve this? It's really quite easy. But you must train yourself to do this. This is the process of changing your thinking that will truly change your life. So here's another one. It's hot in the room today. What could be the assumptions there? Well, obviously the air conditioners are broken. Obviously, whoever's in charge of the air conditioning doesn't care enough about making it comfortable while we're in here. And on and on and on and on. Whatever questions you might have. And then you could go to questions, you could go to something like, why don't they fix it? And then you're headed down a rabbit hole. And that's going to create a problem. What I can share with you is that I didn't turn the air on until 9:30 this morning. It probably should go on about 7:30 for us to be comfortable in here. And my beautiful wife has taken care of that and worked out an arrangement with Jonelle to turn it on at 7:30 when she comes and smudges in here. That's all it took. But anybody could see that and make it a problem and say, I'm just not going back because it's just not comfortable in there. And they don't seem to want to do anything about it. Filled with assumptions. So when you catch yourself doing that kind of thing, and I don't stand here and tell you what I know, ask me or ask someone. And doing it in the form of a question might actually get you a wonderful answer that really feels good, which will allow you to be unburdened by the concern. There's so many levels of healing here. It's really worth considering using these terms rather than getting stuck in a problem, which is what assumptions do for us. They hold us in a problem. I have one other thing I want to share with you this morning. This comes from a current day philosopher, actually. Alan Watts isn't alive anymore, but he certainly is having impact in the world through his thoughts and ideas. And I want to share a quote from him. It's rather long, but it's worth going. And I want to set this up by saying I'm not expecting this of every one of us. It's something to move toward, to strive for, but not to think that we're not fully experiencing our lives until we get here. We are. But think about this thing that he says. It's really powerful. In the Chinese metaphysical tradition, there is a term, Wooshin, or idealness, signifying a state of consciousness in which one simply accepts experiences as they come without interfering with them on the one hand or identifying oneself with them on the other. One does not judge them, form theories about them, try to control them, or attempt to change their nature in any way. One lets them be free to be exactly what they are. The ideal action is to employ one's mind as a mirror, It grasps nothing. It refuses nothing. It receives, but does not keep. Wow. And I would say that if we can let go of assumptions, we have moved one giant step closer to a life like that. So I invite you, I challenge you to pay attention to what you're thinking, especially when there's some little bit of angst involved, or doubt, or confusion. That little thing is holding you back from the full, rich life that you want. So question it. Question it to yourself or to someone else so that you can find your way to that knowing of truth, because you know who you are. I know who you are. You're the presence of God. So let's close this with a treatment. So I know the presence and the power of the One is right here, right now. That creator of the cosmos is everywhere, always, at the point of me and at the point of everyone on this physical plane. So I speak my word knowing that is true. I speak my word with the authority of the divine, knowing that life is rich and full and wonderful with every breath, with every beat of my heart, with every step that I take. And I accept the responsibility to know that and to live from that, being the one who recognizes and expresses the divine presence as my life. And I see that in all those around me, those in this room with me today, those that are listening from afar, watching from afar. I know that God is right where each one is, and that the life that that person is living is whole, is perfect, and is complete. And it's being revealed more and more with every breath, with every thought. And that we move into the light by seeking to know the truth at every step and every way. So I give thanks for this journey, this path of awakening that we all share. I know we're all on it in our individual way, and it's all perfect because God is at every step, around every corner, in every word, and in all of life. That's the truth. And with absolute certainty that's so, I let it go and let it be, right here, right now, and forevermore. And so it is.